So right now, as we gird our loins with an iron jock to prepare ourselves for what is the coming of the new Sportz. New Sportz. It's all about March Madness. Gird your loins, play the balls, run and jump. And the girls are playing some hot-ass basketball, too. They got big feet, too.
I just don't understand it.
Yeah, man. You know, I watched yesterday wonderful game with Gonzaga.
Oh, yes, you did.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Where the young lady.
Against UCLA.
Yeah, Vandersloot.
Yeah.
Score. She's got over 1,000 assists, 2,000 points?
Yeah.
Man, wonderful, hellifying. What a game, what a game. And so I had to remind everybody that we've been talking about March Madness, but Vic, isn't it a trip that the women are doing their thing too? Man.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm going to hit a subject here before actually we get to that, because that's one of the questions I had about, you know, it's March Madness. And if you look at the last week, basically it's been about the men. I mean, I'm not saying that the women haven't been put down
because they don't tell us the same story.
Well, it's hard, and we're going to find out why. We're going to try to come up with why we don't get the same energy as it relates to the March Women's or the March Madness Women's tournament. And maybe we'll get some answers, because I know you're really adept at knowing what women do when they play with the basketball.
I do, because I've spent a lot of time observing women.
Right, you sure did.
With my, both hands in my pockets, and I wasn't counting change.
All right. All right, you guys, I'm about to sit back and set this place on fire, and I'm telling you right now, I fell asleep. I woke up. It was late. I rushed in, so my publishing is all off whack. Didn't have time to do edits. Didn't have time to do anything. All I'm going to tell you is this. The story that has happened since this tournament began, as it relates to those teams that are not in the tournament for March Madness, Tennessee, Bruce Pearl, fired. Now, no big deal.
Right.
Here's my question. Now, I always get into the question. Now, Bruce basically admitted lying to the NCAA of investigators for possible recruitment violations.
No.
All right. Now, this was last year sometime, Mario. Now, here's the point. From that point on, he actually continued to be what you call in the position he's in, not under contract, but still a coach. So the thing is, should he have been fired right away once they've determined he lied? Why did they wait this long? What was the purpose?
The purpose, they didn't want to do it.
Why?
They don't want to do it. You know, they only do enough. They do just enough.
Right.
Whatever the NCAA is going to make them do, they're going to do just enough.
Right.
Because they really don't want to do it.
Well, okay. Now I'm going to say this. Recruitment is a big deal. I'm going to say this is what I think Bruce was doing. I think he had to serve the greater good, saying, okay, look, this is what you do. This is what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to position the transition force. By the time it gets to us as a report, it's totally different. You know, we get in all the media hype, and everybody even said that, he's going to be fired. Now, no big deal. But the season for basketball recruitment is like right away. You can't have a 2 or 3 month lag. You have to position. So I believe that whole position is they say, look, we could have slammed you right now as soon as we determined you were lying, but we're allowing you to stay. You'll reap some benefits from it. So now I don't know what that is. So my question to you is, do you care as it relates to how a coach is supposed to be, like the symbolism for the athletes as a position of leadership? Should he have stayed there knowing that the players knew that he had lied to investigators? What does that do for a team?
I think it screws over the team. It sort of shows that the team, notice throughout all of this, no one cares. Right. It's just like the players who came there to play with that particular coach. Now the coach is gone.
Right.
So the players get screwed all the time.
Okay. Well, now, here's the next one, because I truly believe that, it wasn't that they were under some contract that he had to remain there. I think they all positioned this because you have to understand this, you're talking about football, Lane Kiffin, what he left, and that's still yet to be determined.
That's right.
And now you got the basketball in. So Tennessee is in a position that's going to be even far worse than what has happened to USC. So I'm not trying to.
And they'll still be making big money off their program, probably.
See,
just like USC.
This is the part why
I got to be cynical.
That's right. No,
I got to be cynical. See, who takes the brunt? This is the part that gets. Who ends up getting the worst out of this? The players.
True.
The school can still make money. They can still go on. People will forget. No one ever remembers these scandals. No one ever does.
I agree.
So it's always a temporary thing. But if you happen to be on that team,
right,
now you can't play postseason. You got all these other restrictions.
Right.
Some people just left, right?
Yeah. You see, they lost a lot of, there were some players actually in the tournament who had left Tennessee, letters of intent already because, the wind of the sail is basically saying it's not going to be any good here. Well, here's my other question. You got Bruce Pearl basically going under what they call a current scrutiny of things. And just to ask the question of how many violations may be coming under his watch, let me even preface this with something else that's happened. Shortly after he determined that he lied, not only after that, he committed or is under investigation for 2 days later.
I didn't know about how many violations did he?
This is what I'm saying. How many do you think he's had?
It must be high. I'm going to go 15.
You're going to say 15?
Yes.
Well, the choices we have here for all of you guys
1,
who are
3,
challenged.
6, 9. Very interesting choices, Vic. How come 5?
I didn't want to put
5 and 8 are not choices.
Because those are numbers.
Neither is 12.
I had a nightmare about some numbers. It goes back to something,
68?
Well, 9.
Okay,
but I'm going to leave that alone. So here's the go. What do you said 15, right?
I say 15.
Yeah, at 15. You're close. 10 violations are being right now under his watch that are being claimed as violations or regulations that are being claimed that under his watch he may have had violations on. This is ongoing. So it's yet to be determined the finality of this. So it's not a big deal. I'm just saying the coaches right now seem to be in a position where they're going, look, the landscape of recruitment is that we have to flirt with the edge. Now, Mario, as a coach, would you flirt with the edge? If you're in a smaller school or school that's not
depends
the top
how close
tier.
you felt like you're under NCAA scrutiny. I think that there are people who are watched and people who are not watched.
Okay, I agree.
And especially when if you're in a conference where everybody kind of works together, who's going to be the whistleblower?
I agree. And that leads to something else too, and I'll get to that later. But yeah, I think the whole part is think about what you're doing, and all you need is a hater, and haters now come.
That's right.
And cell phones, and cell phones now report and take pictures and videotape. All right, let me go on over to something else because this was funny when I actually looked at my own typos when it got to the San Antonio Spurs. I said San Antonio Spurs injured and out indefinitely. Well, the whole damn team is not injured. But one of their members has just recently got injured. The 34-year-old Tim Duncan has a severe sprain. Now, we don't know how serious. Sometimes you can come back in a week, less than. We don't know how severe.
Severe sprain is often a matter of weeks.
That's right.
And maybe months.
Said. Okay, now with that.
Could be months.
He's 34 years old. A couple of weeks puts them into the playoffs already, first round. So here's my question to you, Mario. You actually have a rating of the Western Conference as it relates to who are going to be the top teams. I would believe that San Antonio was flirting with the first or second position. They got the best record in the NBA. Where would this place them without Tim Duncan going into the first round? He may come back.
Number 5.
You think they'll be 5th? So let me ask you this then. What 4 teams are ahead?
They're going to drop significantly. Well, you say, now the question is actual ranking or just in terms of strength as a team?
Well, that's one of the components. Go ahead.
Without Tim Duncan, they're not the same team.
True.
They really need him. They're like a lot of the other teams. He was actually having an excellent year.
Right.
Showing a lot of movement. A lot of movement. I mean, I've been loving it.
Right.
But it's really puts a damper in something.
Yeah, and here's the part. Isn't it the part that he brings is not necessarily the numbers he did with rebounds and points. It's the leadership.
Oh yeah, of course.
And he got championship rings.
Well, yeah, but so interesting. It's just that you're in a conference where your traditional people are hugging the bottom, kind of like Dallas, Phoenix.
Right.
They're not really.
The power has shifted.
Yeah, there's a big change now in who's powerful in the West.
Oh,
it's way different now.
You're right. Lakers have nothing to fear when it comes down to the conference that they're in. They have such a large lead. They've already secured their playoff position.
Right.
I'm just saying. I think the teams that step ahead of San Antonio, and I'm gonna give Greg Popovich some help here as it relates to him being great at scheming, but I think it's just entirely too difficult to replace even a bench player that can back up Tim Duncan and give them what they need at that position. So I would say right now the Lakers already move ahead of them.
But
I also say Oklahoma Thunder moves ahead of them.
Yep.
And I would also say Dallas moves ahead of them. And Denver.
I was about to say, you didn't say Denver. Okay, first of all, Denver also serves as the example that never count somebody out.
Right.
Because they had nothing, everybody thought.
Right.
And then here they are on a win, showing some definite life. So I don't know.
And you think about it, Denver's only lost a couple of games since the trade,
That's right.
whereas New York is still struggling.
That's right.
And just to lead into that, if you guys watched the Boston Celtics actually play against the New York Knicks in Madison Square Garden yesterday, there was a point where you just sat there and said, Boston is going to lose this. It's third quarter. They're down by about 15 points. If you ever want to see a demonstration of a team just collapsing and losing in the end, it was so bad that even Chauncey Billups, their backup point guards, the lack of leadership on the floor, mistakes, air balls being shot. Mark, it's the experience that you turn around and say, how can you blame Carmelo and Amari when I call it the wing players are not serving them the ball?
I like what one of the commentators said. He said, well, maybe they need a preseason. In other words, what happens when you bring these players together
right.
in the middle of the season? You haven't had training camp.
Right.
And they play like they need training camp. And I think that's what happens. I think sometimes it's not enough time. Same thing. I don't see that as being much different than what hit Miami.
Right.
I think that you need to have players play with each other, determine those roles, and it takes a minute. It's not something that just goes woo-woo.
Right.
Sometimes it is, but when you have superstar players on the court at the same time in one ball,
right,
you have to figure out a way to do this. And so
right.
I think that's part of it. I think it takes time.
I think the part that, I'm going to say this, and I'm not trying to be critical. Yes, you do need time. And I think the schemes are different. I think it was more difficult for Miami Heat to get their big three because you had two similar players in their style and how they played and command the ball. All three of them have been in that position. Amari Stoudemire coming to New York, he was still number 2 in Phoenix. He wasn't the man. It was Nash. So I don't look at the same situation with Amari and Carmelo. They are different positions where they play at. And the part that got me is you have the coach, D'Antoni, who has a up and down, play kind of loose, run it. And to me, when you have that type of play, it's not complicated, the schemes. But they did say one thing. They said, look, we've had no time to adjust to Carmelo coming in.
Come on, that's what I'm saying. I just think it's hard, Vic. Come on. They haven't had
I agree.
And I tell you what, I tell you one other thing. Chauncey Billups being out affected him way more. You saw the stability. First of all, that was a player, too, that Carmelo was used to playing with.
Right.
So it was wonderful that they came together. But, with him being injured,
right.
That's why I said, I don't think there's any need to panic.
No, I don't think so either.
I think they're going to be a strong playoff team.
Right.
I think they're going to be a stronger team next year.
Well, I could say I agree with you. And here's the other part. This shows you the value of the Denver role players who are former New York Knicks who have served their roles at New York and the positions they play.
Aren't they doing well?
They're doing
the
their
ones
role.
that they traded from New York are doing very well
right.
in Denver.
And they don't have those role players in those positions anymore. They got talented, upcoming players, more identified by their individual talent. But when you get role players, that's people who basically are players who are saying, I'm taking on this role. It may not be the most popular role. It's like Andrew Bynum saying in L.A. He says, my role is defense first, rebound, block shots. That's first. Everything else is secondary because he's going to score. So I'm hoping that New York,